Hello and welcome to Freelancing in Focus, the TVP podcast series where we attempt to cut through the chaos of starting out in television without pretending it's all smooth sailing. I'm Kat Singstacken, a senior lecturer here on the television production course at UCA, and I'll be your host for this afternoon, part moderator, part lecturer, and mostly here to ask the questions that you'd like to know the answers to. I'm really pleased to be joined today by these two brilliant guests. First, Sam Creamer, a former TVP student turned freelance cinematographer and filmmaker who's been out in the real world navigating the highs and lows and long hours of freelance life. And alongside Sam, Del Brown, director and founder of Funny Hands Media, who brings a wealth of industry experience from working with Formula One and MTV amongst a wide range of live productions. So, today is all about demystifying freelance life in UK television, the skills you need, the mistakes they'll probably make, and also how to survive the long hours and how to get rehired. Del, Sam, thank you so much for joining me here. Let's start with the here and now. We're often told we're only as good as our last job, right? So what's the most recent project you guys have been working on?
Recent projects. So I've just finished working on a series last year with Formula One. I was directing a show called The Cool Down Room, which goes out on F1 TV, which is their internet platform. And I also direct a show called F1 Kids, which is the world feed with kids commentators and animated graphics and all that sort of fun stuff. We're also doing quite a bit over at Paramount Studios and in Camden Town and working on a lot of corporate stuff. So that's what's keeping us busy at the moment.
Yeah, and so for me, a big show that I was on just before Christmas was the Horror Games Awards. So that was a big step up for me in terms of putting on a large-scale live show. But prior to that, and coming up soon, I've got some more live shows, music events. So recently shot Nicole Scherzinger at the Royal Albert Hall. I was the head camera operator for that, so looked after 26 cameras across that live show. Which was a major. Yeah, I know. So it gets the sweat going a bit, Del, but you know, I'm moving more into live events now, which is really, really nice. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
That's great. Speaking of looking into like live events, how far ahead are you booked?
For me, so I've got things coming up into February and March in the near term. There's a few things sort of peppered towards the end of the year, you know, August, September. I know I've got some dates scattered there, but really it's sort of things into sort of about March and April, especially that's where, you know, Del, we all know this, of course, that's where end of year, financial year ends for a lot of big companies. So, you know, companies want to get rid of their money by around April time. So that's usually where the bookings come in.
Yeah, similar with us. Q4 is always our busiest time of year, especially lots of Christmas events and all that sort of thing. But yeah, in line with budgets, it seems, coming up to April, companies either will need to spend money or they've now got new budgets that they can invest in content and programs. So, and also it depends on, for example, a show that I work on every Tuesday or every weekend. So those are pre-booked in advance, but often the phone will just suddenly ring out the blue and there'll be an email and are you available this week? And you have to just drop everything and say yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you find there's a rhythm to your calendar? Do you feel like there's times when it rains and times when it's a bit of a drought?
I think all freelancers, we all feel the same. It is feast or famine, and always the sod's law. When you've been quiet for a long period and suddenly you've got a booking in the diary, the phone then rings and everyone wants you for that week or that day that you can't do. That is just what we all experience, that, don't we?
Absolutely. And I always have this running joke that if the work ever dries up, all I have to do is book a holiday.
Yeah.
I know
you're going to be booked.
The
moment you get on that plane, the phone will go.
Say it'd be the biggest job you've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, so that's always the thing. If you're getting bookings, you know you're going to get booked those days.
I had a big trip to Japan, and I was convinced that this big trip I'll spend a lot of money on. The moment I get on that plane, the phone will need me constantly. Yeah. And what do you do in that scenario when you've booked and you've spent a lot of money on a really special trip?
Yeah.
And you're freelance and you have to answer the phone, you have to respond.
Well, what do you do?
What do you do? Yeah. It's really tricky. There's nothing you can do in that scenario because you are abroad and you've got to make the decision, am I going to focus on enjoying my trip or am I going to respond to these emails? And it is a balance like that because we all know if you turn the job down, the company that just phoned you will go to someone else. And often in our world, if you've done one job, it feeds more work, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like for me, if I was on a show and I was in the chair directing one day, often the production manager or producer will go, "Oh, are you available for this one?" And that's what feeds work for us all.
Being present, being visible is so valuable, isn't it? And you know, there's always that fear that you know that though you might have been the first person they called, if they find someone else and they do just as well as you, they might just ring that person next time. They won't think, oh, I'll give Del or Sam a call because I missed them last time.
Yeah.
They'll just go for the person they already booked.
Yeah.
So
like yesterday, we had an email from a new production manager on a show that we work on frequently. New production manager, doesn't know me, doesn't know our company, and she could bring on board her friend or people that she's worked with recently, or she might not copy and paste last year's call sheet. It might be all brand new crew. It's full of unknown, is our world.
So how do you prepare for that? Like, let's say realistically, you do have the flu and you're terribly ill. What can you do, Sam? I mean, particularly if you're sort of a sole trader. So how does that work for somebody like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one because, I don't like to advocate for working when you're really, really sick. But equally, as someone who's self-employed, when you're running your own business, because as a freelancer, you are responsible for your own work and your own business. If you're off, you're not getting sick pay. You're not going to walk back in the next week and everyone says, sorry, we missed you, but hope you're feeling better. They'll have moved on and the job will have gone away and that'll be the end of it. So, sometimes, especially because, with this feast or famine thing, sometimes the only thing you can do is just to plow on through. You take the book in, you get through it, and you say, once I'm out of the door at 5 p.m., 6 p.m. that day, I'll recover in the next 2 days. I've just got to get through this one. And I might be guilty of having done that, a few times, because there is just that fear that you think, well, if I don't see it through, someone's not going to call again. And there's, especially in media, right? Like you don't want to be the person that doesn't show up on the day.
Yeah.
That's the cardinal sin, right? Not to show up on the day. So.
Big time. So the London 2012 London Olympics, yeah? I was booked in advance to work on the Olympic Games, and then there was a short break and I was going to be vision mixing on the Paralympics. And in that short break between the Olympics and the Paralympics, I slipped 2 discs. Now, as we know, and some students might not, when you are self-employed, when you are a sole trader, when you are a freelancer, you don't get paid if you don't show up. So I had a confirmed booking. It was in my diary, in their diary, that I was going to be on that job. And I had the painful task of phoning the production manager and going, I've just done my back in, I can't do this. Knowing the pressure that all the directors and vision mixers in London were all booked. We were all working on the 2012 Olympic Games. To find someone with that skill set last minute was probably going to be really tricky. And also on a personal level, knowing I'm not well, I can't get in the car and I'm going to have to turn down this work on something like that, the 2012 Olympic Games in London, So we've all been there. It's just one of these things.
That's actually just reminded me of something which happened to us about a year ago, which is a mutual friend of mine who is a camera operator. I recommended him to Del because Del come to me and asked me if I could attend something. And I was booked, and I recommended a really trusted friend of mine who, I would trust him with absolutely anything. He's such a reliable guy. And he had a hernia, and he ended up in A&E. He was really, really unwell. And it was the first time I'd ever recommended him to Del. And he said, "You know what, Sam?" He said, "I'm going to have to get in touch with this guy. I can't move. I'm in hospital." And now I've recommended him. Del's never met him before, so now I've, from a secondary perspective, association, yeah. I've recommended someone who's now had to drop out, and and it's not that person's fault, but that might have been his only chance. That's got on my recommendation, his only chance to work with Del. Because again, you not intentionally, but Del's not worked with him. He's not going to be the first name that comes to mind when that opportunity comes up again. It will be the person who was there on the day.
Yeah,
so
big time.
There seems to be such a theme here about reliability and being on time. Is that some advice you could give to students?
Oh, completely. I mean, when I teach students, I always say, if your call time's 10 o'clock and you arrive at 10 o'clock, you're already late. So, and always, first time of making a first impression. So if you're on a job, make sure you're there early and do all the right things. Don't be on your phone, be present, take it all in, speak to people, engage with people. Don't be looking on your phone and trying to be the first person out the door, because people will pick up on that and that won't go down well. And it's all those soft skills that make such a big difference, first impression, when you're trying to get your foot on the career ladder and trying to get in with a production company. How you come across with the team members is really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Sam?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that unfortunately, it is one of those things that comes with time and with maturity. When we're green, perhaps some of those soft skills, those social cues, we've not quite fully, when you're used to working with your mates and you're at uni and everyone knows each other and it does, oh, well, that's okay if they turn up 5 minutes late, we'll make it work. Suddenly you're out in the world and, all these people, they don't really care whether, if you're 5 minutes late, well, tough, so being aware of that and knowing that these people are, because as we know, the industry is so small, right? There's so many people that we bump, and I bump into people all the time, and fun enough, again, strange enough, Dale, I think you should be my agent or something. I should give you.
Shall I be your agent?
Yeah, I
okay.
should give you a fee. I should give you a fee or
Yeah,
something. Because
we can do that.
I mean, when I first got my job at YouTube, when I was working there back in 2019, the studio manager there, I did an interview with them, and she said to me,
it was Wendy.
Wendy, and who used to work at QVC.
Yeah.
And he said, do you know Dale Brown?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, I know Dale Brown. I don't know whether it was that did it, but the next day they called me and said, if you want it, we'll have you.
Yeah.
And so just having that reassurance that there's someone else who would give you the thumbs up is enough.
Yeah, and like Wendy, I'd worked with her when I was in my 20s and she was a floor manager. And then forward wind the story, she was the production manager at that studio and she brought on board Funny Hand to make the content and make the shows at that studio. Yeah. So it's all about your network. It's all about who you've worked with in the past.
Yeah, it's a real family, isn't it?
Yeah.
Speaking of broadcast television, broadcast TV in the UK turned 100 this week. Yeah.
None of us realised.
None of us realised.
All the celebration, the fireworks.
Yeah.
But you guys have contributed to that story, and you've been a part of this nation's broadcast history. So looking back at all of your jobs, what's been like one of your favorite standout jobs that you've done in the industry that sort of highlighted like your love for film and television?
Ooh, standout job. I think it was the big jobs for me that have stood out. For example, the 2012s, when the Olympics came to town and I was able to say I worked on that. That was really good. And then other jobs that have come in purely by chance. I vision mixed some Polish cage fighting at Wembley Arena, and that was just absolutely mad that it was such a big event and there was so much going on and it was such a big shoot and a big outside broadcast. So that's another big job. And then working for Formula One is, loads of people that really love Formula One as a sport, and for me to be able to be in there working on some of their big shows, it's all really good stuff.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I've done some, DIT work and camera assist work on the Doctor Who Behind the Sofa and the special edition releases of the classic Doctor Who seasons, which is fantastic. I mean, it's just so much fun, and you see all these cast members from the seasons from years ago, and it's so exciting to be part of that. And my name's on the Doctor Who wiki now.
Really?
I'm actually part of this, and it's such a privilege to know that even in some small way, something of such heritage and such value, in some way you've contributed to that. I'm not, I'm way down on the list of people that have made any impact in this universe of Doctor Who stories, but just knowing that you part of that story somewhere in there is something that you've done, and you've been part of that creative process and that creation of something, I think is so valuable, and that's what kind of gets the that's what gets the blood going for me. I'm thinking, wow, I got to be part of telling that story in some way.
And do you know something I really love, and that is that presenters that I used to watch as a kid on telly, I'm now directing, and who would have ever thought that the people that were on my telly box when I was growing up and was watching, I'm literally in their ear now telling them what camera to look to.
Absolutely, and I did, I DP'd a documentary with Helen Kirsten, presented by Io Akinwolere, who was a Blue Peter presenter, and he was a Blue Peter presenter when I was a kid.
Yes.
And then to be there and I'm the one that's saying, well, now we're going to be doing a walkie-talkie. You're going to walk to camera, and I'm the one that's shooting it. And you think,
and that's hilarious because one of mine is Anthea Turner, who was a Blue Peter presenter, and I'm now directing her. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? And you see these people, and there they are, and because imposter syndrome is such a real thing, and suddenly you're in the same room with these people, and you think, I'm going to get found out in a minute. Someone's going to say, no, not you, right? But
it's great that you guys have come this far. But what was your sort of first step into television? How did you get to this point?
Well, for me, I mean, this is my moment to plug UCA. I can say it's UCA that did it for me. But I mean, I've always loved visual storytelling. Even since I was a kid, I knew that there was something about visual storytelling that just held so much weight for me. And I found myself at UCA, and from there it just grew. And as I started to understand how I could be part of that, because a lot of us, you start out and you think, I want to be a director, I want to be a filmmaker, but actually there's so much more so much more than just being an auteur, right? There's more to it than that. You can have an input in a different way, and that's how I found myself getting into the the kind of more tech side of things, and the engineering side as well. As I didn't necessarily have to be an auteur to succeed.
Yeah. I started my career here at the Maidstone Studios.
Really?
So when I was studying my A-levels, I was coming here every Thursday afternoon to do work experience. Back in the day when this was the family channel and all those channels were here. And then on the back of that, I went to a university called Ravensbourne and studied professional broadcasting. And then my first job in the TV industry was working for QVC, the shopping channel, as a technical operator. So I was doing cameras and sound and vision control and transmission, all that sort of stuff. And then after a couple of years of being there, I got an opportunity for an internship to be trained in-house as a direct-to-vision mixer by a woman called Barbara Gainsley, who is still with us and very respected in our industry. And yeah, she trained me to direct and vision mix, and that started my career as a director. Yeah.
So do you guys think it's important to have that university education to get into the TV industry?
It's an interesting one, and again, we're on the UC. We're here in the UCL Brad. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I think it's a case of what, and I would always say whatever works for you is the right thing. If it works for you, then that was the right choice. But for me, I wouldn't have had the launch pad that I had. Being here at the Maidstone Studios when I started, I was seeing people like Jeff Miles walk around the building. You've got these pictures of all these people. You're inspired. You feel like you're already part of something. And you're in that kind of launch pad phase of your career, and you think, okay, I'm near these people, and we've said this so many times, being visible and being present is half the battle. Once someone knows your face,
yes,
and I say this, and I mean this in the most sincere way. It's not like I was sort of trying to game anything, but I always made a point of every time I ever saw Jeff, I'd say hi, I'd shake his hand. I still say hi to Jeff now because
he's a legend.
He's a legend.
He is.
But it wasn't because I was trying to game anything. It was because I wanted to make sure that I was present and that I was thought of, and that, when they thought of a runner, it might be me that they would.
You were on his radar.
Yeah, exactly. And that in a sincere way.
And it's soft skills like that that does open those opportunities and those doors. Looking at somebody and shaking their hand and being polite, as opposed to looking to the floor and can't have eye contact in the corridor. Little things like that probably made a big difference with that.
And just I think showing a respect for people that have come before you, and asking for their advice and their tips, and just how would they have gone about things. I think there's so much value in that, and having the confidence to go to those people can really get you a long way. I think.
Absolutely. I think going to university opens opportunities, and again, it's on whether you see the opportunities and take it. Like, for example, coming here at the UCA, being in the Maidstone Studios, getting opportunities to say yes to running work in the studios, exposure to visiting lecturers who open ideas and doors to different opportunities. Funny Hands have used a couple of UCA students to work as runners on some of our projects, all as a result of being in the university, making contacts, being in the right place at the right time. So yeah, as long as you seize the opportunities, then definitely university opens quite a lot of doors.
And was there any sort of key skills that you've picked up from your university education that you've taken into TV? You think, I'm so glad I learned that because I picked that up at uni, or a lecture or a session that you had.
Things we picked up when we was at university. Oh God, I want to go back and get my younger self and shake him by the shoulders and go, don't do that, and do it like this. I think we're all guilty when we're that age. We sort of treat it as a extension of A-levels and school and sixth form maybe, and you're still finding your feet and you're establishing who you are and learning lots of new skills. It was interesting when I went to university, I spent the whole time there doing two roles. I was the voiceover artist. If ever they needed voiceover artists, it was always Del. Or I was the floor manager. Every single show, Del was the floor manager. And from the moment I walked out of Ravensbourne, as I graduated, I've done a bit of voiceover work, but I've certainly never done any floor managing. And I spent a whole of the time at Ravensbourne just being the floor manager. I shied away from the technical equipment, and the first job I was a technical operator, where I was actually operating all the stuff that I avoided touching and using whilst I was at uni. So yeah, if I was going to give myself some advice, it would be, whilst you're at university, expose yourself to everything. Don't shy away. Stuff that you think you don't like, even try, because it might end up paying your mortgage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think that's so important, to be inquisitive. Make use of the facilities that are available to you. Because a lot of these things are under lock and key somewhere. It's not, you're not going to get your hands on a vision mixing desk unless you're in an environment like this. You couldn't just walk into Sky and say, "Can I sit down, have a go?" Can I have a go?
Thousands of pounds.
Yeah, so having that, being that natural kind of inquisitive, exploration of things, I think is really important, and really just making the most of the time that you have available. Because without sounding sort of too cliche about it, it really is, a really free time in your life. You have a lot of time to explore and try things. And if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. If you do something on a production, a student production, and you go, "That was awful, I hated doing that," it's not the end of the world.
No,
you've learned something. You can try something else. And don't be I think don't ever be afraid of mistakes, because you always have opportunity to learn. There's always opportunity to learn and grow.
Yeah.
But especially in this, within the safety net of being at uni, try as many things as possible, and if it falls over,
Doesn't matter.
so what?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Speaking about students and being at uni, they often feel the pressure to specialise. Do you think that's, important, especially in the freelance industry, to start to specialise their skills, or to be sort of a jack of all trades, master of none?
This is one of my things. This is one of my things. So this again is just my experience and my opinion, and that is when I meet a student and I say, "Oh, blue sky thinking, what would you like to do?" And they say, "Oh, I want to be a documentary filmmaker." And I'm like, "Okay, but you've got to plan how you're going to get there. And you've got to be employable, and you've got to have lots of skills, and you've got to have lots of experience before you're going to be ever in a position to be in that end job." And my advice is always expand your mind, your repertoire, your experience. Say yes to everything. Leave university saying, "I have a basic understanding of camera operating, and I understand framing, and I also know a bit about sound, and I also know a bit about editing," because then when you come to graduate, and all the universities are graduating at the same time, so there's a lot of students all going out there looking for work, be the person that can adapt your CV and go, "Look, I could apply for that because I've got these skills," as opposed to on day one thinking, "I'm just going to go for that end goal and specialise in that one area."
No, absolutely. And for me, that's been, I've had so many opportunities in so many varying roles because I've opened up my remit. So though I am a filmmaker, a cinematographer, and my primary trade is shooting and operating a camera, for Dell and for others, I've operated live streams. I've done video engineering, data management, DIT. And that's not to say that I'm trying to master all of those things, but I'm across them, and I have the confidence to be able to say, yes, I can do that if someone comes to me and asks me about it. And and that's the thing, is I think not kind of boxing yourself into one thing is a safe way to open yourself up to more opportunities. Because if you're in if the phone's going to ring and someone says, "Do you do this?" and you say, "No, I don't," but it's something you could probably do, I think take the opportunity to do it if you're confident to do it. One of the things I will say is that there's a balance between agreeing to something that you feel confident doing and completely winging it without any experience or any knowledge. If you're you have to have some experience, some knowledge, but even I think as well, having the confidence sometimes to know what your limitations are is also really important. I remember even once, and it keeps going back to it's just things,
us.
just us things I've done. But I think one time, some time ago, Dell come to me and said, we're looking for a PowerPoint operator, someone just to do a slide deck, and I thought, well, it's not that I can't do it, because of course I can operate slides on a stream. It's just I've never done it, and I wouldn't want to say yes to turning up to a shoot that Dell's running.
And that was for a live show with the CEO of a big company from America. Giving a big presentation.
I'm sure I can do. I can move the slides and do it to a queue. I said, but I don't know. I just wasn't comfortable with saying, yeah, I can be there for that.
And that's really interesting, because if Sam had said yes to it and not been confident, and we'd put our trust in that he had said yes to the work, and our company was making that production, and in front of a huge client, something had messed up, that would have really done his reputation no good at all, because we'd have lost trust in him, we'd have lost confidence in him, we'd have gone, well, we can't now put him forwards for other work, because if he makes that same mistake. So you have to be, as you say, honest to yourself, and don't be one of these people who just say, oh, I'm going to say yes to everything that comes in. And certainly in the industry, professional, when you're getting paid, don't wing it.
Well, I have one, again, one of these live shows for a big concert. where I was opping and looking after the cameras across, multiple camera positions and things like that. And the guy that was producing the show said, well, you're a great digital imaging technician, you're great at data wrangling. I'm already doing probably at this point a 14-hour day. So do you want to be across some of the data management at the end of the day? Because I trust that you will be across our data management. And I said, I'm just so not comfortable with doing it at the end of the day after the other stuff. And if I'm going to be across something, I want to be across the role that I'm doing, and I don't feel comfortable doing it. He said, well, what if we doubled the rate? What if I gave you? What if I gave? What if I gave you double what I'd have given you?
Oh, there's the carrot.
And I'm sitting there going, well, that's great. But in the end, I said, it's not the money. It's not about how much you're paying me to do it. It's I do not trust myself to do this job to the best of my ability for you.
Yeah.
And you know what? He turned around and he said to me, I really respect that. I'm grateful that you had the confidence and the awareness to tell me that, because again, it means that you are building that trust with that person. You're not trying to pull the wool over their eyes or do anything that, and it's sneaky kind of strange stuff. So that I think that was really beneficial in the long run. So yeah.
So really knowing your limitations But what are some skills gaps perhaps that are more soft skills or things in the industry that students could develop that would help them stand out in an already very competitive market? Like, what are the sort of skills that you're like, wow, if I saw on somebody's CV, that's really interesting that they do that?
Yeah, I think the soft skills is so important. So in TV, we work in long days, aren't we? Sometimes 10, 11, 12, even longer. Yeah. So for me, running a production company, I have to make sure that all the team that we've put together all get on with each other, because if there's personality clashes, if there's friction or tension, that's never going to have a good impression, especially to the client. So soft skills, people that have got the confidence, especially youngsters, students who are maybe, 20, 21, 22, and they're going into the industry and they're in the middle of a production company full of older people that they don't know, and we all get to know each other, and we're all chatting and bantering with each other. To have the confidence to go in and hold their own. Little things, like I always say, when it comes to lunchtime, don't be that person that picks up your food and goes and sits in the corner of the canteen and spends the whole time on your phone. Have the confidence to go and sit in the middle of the team table with all the other crew. Don't be on your phone and just chat to people, because you'll have scored so many points by the end of lunchtime and you don't even realise it, because the team will have got to have known them and like their personality, hopefully. And by the end of the job, that's when people turn around and go, oh, he or she was really good. Oh, take their number. Yeah, next time we've got an opportunity, give them a ring because they were really good. And all of that is the soft skills. That wasn't based on, so question number one is what degree did you get? Did you get a first? Did you get a second? Or how well do you know Avid inside out? Yeah. It was not those questions, is it? It's about the soft skills. And I think that is so important. So confidence. Even today, we've spoken to students that have said during their 3 years on a university course, one of the biggest things they got out of it was building their own confidence. And how when they started, they were really shy, they didn't want to talk. And by the end of it, they built their confidence because they already realised that you have to be confident to work in telly. Yeah. We're all full of big personalities and we're all people, aren't we? We're all talking to each other. And that's a big part of the job.
I mean, telly is a big family, and it is about sort of creating that family when you are on locations or shoots with different people, and it's kind of a universal language, television. So how important is it for television students to actually be able to talk about television?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's something for me that to see that passion. And it doesn't matter, I was having a chat with one of the students, a few years ago about their taste in a certain genre of film, shall we say. But though I didn't agree with the types of films that they liked, the fact they were so passionate about them and so interested in the process and what they meant was already more exciting, because you want to see people that are interested in the process, whether it's live game shows, whether it's movies, whatever it might be, to see people be excited about it and want to be part of that conversation and want to get involved in the making is so valuable, I think.
That's such a big thing for me. Yeah. I always say, why are you here on the first week? And they look at me all nervous, because what I'm really trying to find out is, do you wake up in the morning going, I really can't wait to make telly. Yeah. Oh, I'm really passionate about it. I really love that show. Oh, let's chat about what your favourite show was. It's probably not what I watch, but I don't care. Yeah. Just as long as you're interested. I think some students fall into a trap of not really having the passion, not really wanting to be there. Yeah. When you sort of scratch the surface, they would be quite happy going into a different industry. And a bit of me goes, oh dear,
Yeah.
how's this going to end? You know, because you haven't got that excitement.
Well, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Is that we've spoken about this, just over our informal chats that we have, about sometimes people see the glory, they see the final outcome, and they think that's what it's about, But one of the former lecturers here many years ago used to do this thing where, we'd be out in the cold in the studio, in the empty studio, and everyone's got their coats on and, North Face jacket, because you're in TV, so it has to be a North Face jacket.
It has to be. The law.
And he'd say, if being in this cold room at this point is, not at a good time, if, like shooting something in here and blocking out a scene is already starting to make you go, oh, it's not really the thing. You go, well, the majority of the job's probably going to be, if you're on location, you might be in a field somewhere at 5 o'clock in the morning, freezing cold, with, a mug of tea, and, you're watching the sun come up, and, actually, if that's not getting you excited, to get one shot, and you've been out there for 2 hours to see one thing, maybe it's not necessarily the right thing.
And do you know what? That's why I don't work in film.
Yeah.
That's why I don't work in film. I can't think of anything I'd least rather do than stand in a field with my North Face jacket on, in the rain, with an umbrella, waiting for 6 hours to get the right lighting just so we can capture that 10-second sequence. Oh my God. And that's why I'm not an editor, because I don't want to sit in a dark room on my own editing other people's footage. Yeah. My personality, my character was so, I need to be with people. And I was always the director at junior school, directing my own plays, so it was no surprise to my mates that Del ended up being a director in telly, because that's what I was always showing signs that I gravitated to. I loved being part of a group and telling people what to do, and so yeah, find a role in our industry that suits your personality. That's a big thing.
I'll just sort of like top that with the point that I think a passion of any kind is infectious. It's important to have passion and bring that with your personality, because that excitement, especially when you turn up to a production and you've got all these jaded old curmudgeons that have had a bit, aren't very excited about it, but actually pretty much everybody that was there had that same excitement when they first stepped through that door once upon a time. No matter how cynical and jaded they might be now, seeing that excitement in someone coming into it will rejuvenate the people that are there too. I think it's so infectious, and it gets you excited about the making.
Yeah, even down to where we are today, and I'm not even joking, driving around that roundabout to pull into the Maidstone studios takes me back to 18-year-old Del that was coming here on Work Experience and the Family Channel and seeing the satellite dishes, and I still get that buzz. Yeah. So yeah, we're very lucky in that respect, because I know a lot of people work in industries that they don't have a passion for, and even at my age, would you still be as excited? But yeah, we're lucky.
How important then is it networking really? Because it seems like TV seems to be pretty well connected. You guys have worked and known each other together. How important is it to network for students starting off in this industry?
I think even our working relationship has come as a result of our networking and being in the same facility as each other and having eye contact and getting to know each other and swapping phone numbers and then being in the right place at the right time. I can't remember the last time I updated my CV. I certainly don't put a suit on and attend job interviews. I'm very lucky in that respect. All of our work comes in through word of mouth, through recommendations. Goes back to your early point about you're only as good as your last job and how networking is important. Recommendations, people that have worked with you in the past. That's all what our industry is about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think something else to add to that, I think, is that there's levels to your networking, and not that when you're meeting people and kind of discussing things for the first time, there's also levels of engagement with that person. I've known you for probably 7 years or something now, Del. So, to be honest, I probably couldn't tell you which way your political leanings were, what your religious views are. Yeah, I really don't. First of all, I don't know, and second of all, I don't really care. But I know I know that you're brilliant at your job. People respect you, and if you was to call Del, the job's going to happen. And I like to think that people think the same thing about me, and anything else about my life isn't really relevant because I'm there to make the work happen.
It's true.
Bring yourself, but also know which parts of your personality need to be present.
Yeah, it's true. It's absolutely true.
And how does one start developing that network? Is it through university? Is it through peers? How do you start? Especially if you don't have any family in the industry.
Yeah, I don't have any family in the industry. Absolutely not. So everything I've created has been through networking and getting yourself out there, being visible. University is a great place to start because when you leave and you go into the industry, I mean, we've got a situation with Funny Hands where we're being booked through an ex-student of mine. So it's hilarious. I was literally stood behind her as she was doing her final project in the gallery 2 years ago, and now she's the one emailing us, booking us on jobs. So yeah, the more people that you have a network with, students that are leaving, going into the industry, when you have opportunities for work experience or you're doing any running work, maybe LinkedIn is also a good source of linking with people.
Absolutely, and that's fun enough. There's a big events company that I've done a bit of work for called Aztec, and I know you might have heard of Aztec, but they do a lot of sort of events and trade shows and things. And one of their kind of head guys saw a post I made on LinkedIn, dropped me a message on WhatsApp. Bear in mind, this is someone that hired me 6 months ago. Dropped me a message that I'm going freelance. I'm leaving there probably. If something comes up, would you let me know? And now all of a sudden, I'm in the position to be asking him to show up. Yeah. But 6 months ago, I was the one that was going to him. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
When you guys were starting out, was freelance something that you knew you wanted to go into, or did you guys want to go into maybe sort of a 9-to-5 or a regular job with a studio?
I absolutely did not want to be a freelancer. And I've been a freelancer for more years than I ever was staff. In fact, in my whole career, I've probably only been staff for 6 years of that whole career. The rest of it I've been self-employed. The idea of going self-employed and freelance filled me with dread. The uncertainty of knowing where you're going to be working next, when the phone's going to ring, if you've slipped 2 discs, who's going to pay you? Who's going to pay you? If you go on holiday, who's going to pay you? Having to be responsible for all of your own tax, national insurance, all of those scary stuff, I avoided and did not want to go into. And I went and had a staff job at a channel that then folded after 6 months. And I went into work and was like, Del, could you go into the office? And they were all in suits. And I was like, oh, what's this going to be? Because I'd never had this before. And I was only like 26, 27. And they were like, just to let you know that we're pulling the channel and everyone's being made redundant. And suddenly I was forced into self-employed. Didn't have a choice about it. And I had no network because I'd been staff. So no one knew me and I didn't know anyone else. I hadn't worked on any other channels. So that's the doom and gloom bit, but then I'm here evidence to say, but it ended up well, and I've done many years of it. And if you work hard and you play the game correctly, and play the cards correctly, then you can make a successful career out of it, and it could all end well.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that, Dale, that you never wanted to be freelance, because I was the complete opposite. The longest I've ever spent in a job, apart from being, with UCA, 9 months was the longest stint I've ever had as an employee of any company, and that was my first 9 months after I left uni, and I can sort of look back on it now and laugh because when I first started out, I was going to be the greatest cinematographer that ever lived. Yeah, I was going to, by the time I was 23, I was going to win an Oscar. I was going to, I was turned up, and I knew more than anybody, and I was ready to go. And so strangely, I think my sort of complete, blind ignorance to the fact that I wasn't the greatest camera op that ever lived worked out quite well in my favour, because I quit and went, right, well, watch me, and somehow I managed to get away with it without falling completely flat on my face. But that was how I was working as a technical runner at a company, and where I was in their warehouse a lot of the time and doing a lot of the kit prep and things like that, I'd see a lot of their freelancers coming in to pick up gear, going out in the vans, and I saw this guy come in and he said to me, what are you doing, Sam? I said, well, I'm putting cameras in the boxes, and I thought no shame in that, But yeah. He said to me, I said to him rather, what's your job? Where are you off out to? And he said, oh, we're going out to some movie premiere. We're doing a red carpet movie premiere. I thought, well, I'm in the warehouse and he's going to the movie premiere. And I said, well, hang on a minute. All these guys keep turning up and saying they're going on all these good jobs, and I'm still in the warehouse. I said, well, why don't and I'd started to get the names of some of these guys. I had some of the numbers, and I thought, well, if they can start just going out to those things, why can't I do that? Yeah. So, just out of that, blind confidence and ignorance, I went, yeah, I'm going to do that. I don't really quite know how I managed to get away with it, but sometimes you have to jump in at the deep end. It's a bit of that thing, isn't it? Where they say, when they sort of say about putting babies into water, when they're first born and they learn how to swim immediately. It's like if you don't, then there's a rather morbid alternative. So you have to
sink or swim. Off you go.
You have to swim. You have to find a way to get to shore and float. So that's my metaphor for the day.
Yeah, interesting.
So how do you, especially when students are starting out, I think a lot of times they undervalue their work and what they're doing. So how do they start, as freelancers, start putting a value to their work and not just getting underpaid or doing jobs for friends and families? How do you start developing that sort of paycheck, that and understanding your value?
Yeah, well, I suppose what you're alluding to there is if suddenly somebody says, "Oh, my son or daughter has gone to university and studied television and plays with cameras. Oh, we've got a wedding. Could you come and do my wedding video?" It could be an example like that, couldn't it? Or oh, my son does a bit of editing. Oh, could they just edit this? And you're thinking, at what stage can you monetize it? At what stage can you say, "This is my profession. I'm earning some money for it"? I think all those things are good experience, and it builds up your catalogue of work, and you learn stuff through going through it. I mean, wedding videos is a great place to start, isn't it? And providing you've got something that you can give the bride and groom, and everyone's happy with it, you've got away with it. But I think as you develop skills that people want to pay for, that's when you can really start monetizing it. People have seen examples of your work and you go, "Oh wow, I want that person to work on it because look, have you seen how they edited that video, or have you seen how they shot that sequence?" And that's when you suddenly get a bit of reputation because people have seen your body of work or have worked with you and go, "Oh, I can highly recommend this person."
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting in terms of how you approach sort of pricing up your work and quoting for your work, because I've done sort of both sides of it, where I've been freelancing for somebody or for a company as crew, but also I've had jobs where I've been pricing up work for people. People come to me for quotes, and it's a strange thing, but there's a process where you start to work out the price that you're giving for the work, and the value of what you're charging is, in a strange way, it's kind of like saying, like, what's the value of a piece of paper or something? Is that it's worth as much as the value you put on it. If you think that the work is worth that much, that's the price. And if someone's going to meet you there at that, then that's great. And then there's obviously ways to negotiate. But I had this conversation once, and I'll try and not go too far onto a tangent, but someone was saying to me about, who did some photography headshots and things, said, "I don't know what to charge for photography headshots now." And I'm seeing people do high-end photography. And I shot a podcast with Rankin, if anyone knows who that is. It's a really famous photographer. And I said, "Well, what does Rankin charge for a headshot?" It's probably £50,000 per photo.
Yeah,
I said,
ridiculous.
"But what makes it worth £50,000? Because a photograph is a photograph."
True.
So how
but
do
you're
you
paying for that person's
Exactly.
career. That's what you're paying for, isn't it? Their experience.
Yeah, experience, their
Yeah.
eye, it's all of that. So again, when you're pricing up your work, what is it that you're offering? Where is the value in the price? Is it in the deliverable, or is it in your experience, your time, your ability to bring a team in, or whatever it might be? How do you gauge that?
It's really interesting because let's say when I'm directing and vision mixing, you could argue, "Oh, we'll get a university student that can happily sit there and press the buttons in the same order that you would have done, Del."
Yeah.
But what I'm bringing to the party is all of my experience that I might actually save that studio or that production company a lot of money by seeing a problem and avoiding it, or being in a scenario in the middle of a show where something's gone wrong. And because I've probably experienced that many times in my career before, it doesn't throw me, it doesn't panic me, and I've got in my back pocket a list of things that I'll do to get out of it. Exactly. Whereas somebody that's junior to me that hasn't got that experience would be able to press the buttons and count backwards the same way I can, but then suddenly in that same scenario would struggle, and that might then have a consequence. So let's say it's experience and evidence of your work.
And do they also have to consider kit hire, insurance, the fact that they do have to pay for their own holiday or sick pay? Or do you put that in your estimates when you do your own budgeting and stuff for work? Do you try and calculate, "Oh, in a year I've got X amount of work, so I need to make sure I'm covered, or I've got some money in the bank to get me through January"? Or how do you plan and produce a plan for your year so financially you're viable as a freelancer?
Well, I don't know about you, Sam. I don't know if I'm that organised that I planned for the year, but I certainly know that as a freelancer, as a sole trader or a limited company, that you need certain things. You need public liability insurance, professional indemnity insurance, which has a price next to that you have to pay for. And your other expenses of getting to and fro a job, your own travel costs that probably on a job won't be covered. You've got to preempt the tax bills that are going to come in every January and July. You're going to have a self-assessment bill that you've got to pay. If you're a limited company, you've got a corporation tax bill you've got to pay. So you've got to factor all these things in because these are all costs of running your own business, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
And both of you guys do run your own business, and there's a slight difference in how your business is set up. Because Sam, you've got Motion Hut, but you are Motion Hut, and Del, you've got Funny Hands, but Funny Hands is a bigger picture as well. But it started off as just you. So, why did you guys set up companies instead of just being Del Brown or Sam Creamer?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. So let's rewind. So I was just a sole trader operating on my own, and I had a new client come to me and say they wanted to run a live 24-hour show, and I put together the crew and I held the hand of the client and I found the studio and we did the whole production for them. And at the end of it, my colleagues turned around and said, you should have run that through your production company. And I was like, what production company? And the light bulb went off and I was like, okay, this is an opportunity for us to turn me into a production company. And yes, Funny Hands is a freelance-led company. We work on all sorts of different programs. So we're putting together teams of freelancers that are working on different projects. So we have to have all of the above. We have to have public liability, professional indemnity insurance policies. We're paying crew, so we've got payroll and accounts team and all these added expenses because we are a limited company. But for a student that's just leaving and going into the industry first, getting maybe some runner work, they would need to be set up as a sole trader. And they've got to be aware that there are obligations. They have to we have to register, don't we? I think it's like within the first 3 months of you doing a paid job, you have to register with HMRC to declare I am a sole trader and you're on their books, which means then you have to do a self-assessment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to pay your tax bill every...
Yeah, make sure you've done all of your accounting.
Do it all, it's all accountable for. And then the shock horror that they will then look at your previous year's earning and they will predict that's what you're going to earn next year. And they'll want some of that up front that you've got to then find out of your bank balance and you've got to pay in the July. So there's all these different things. And even down to slightly scary things like if you are negligent on a job and the production has a problem as a result of you being negligent, so you just caused, I don't know, a light to tip over and it's just crashed, banged, and it was an expensive camera that it fell into, or you were doing an edit and you couldn't deliver the edit, so the production process couldn't, then things uncomfortably could end up being people starting to sue each other, and then are they suing you as a sole trader, in which case you personally are liable? Are they suing your limited company, in which case the limited company is liable? There's all these things that you just have to be aware of.
There's a sort of psychology to that as well. So like for me with Motion Hut, so like when I work with you, for example, Del, that's usually me. Yes. Sam Creamer is coming to work for you. Motion Hut isn't coming to work for you. When I'm pricing up jobs and clients are coming to me with particular shoots and things like that, that's when Motion Hut as a thing gets involved. And for me, it's about presenting a brand to clients that attracts the type of clients that I want to get. And Sam Creamer, camera guy, doesn't necessarily attract those types of jobs from those types of clients. And also, I think it's nice to have some kind of psychological barrier between you and your work and you and your business. So Motion Hut isn't me, I am not Motion Hut. Motion Hut's successes and failures are somewhat my responsibility, but they also aren't entirely me. And having that separation of my life and Motion Hut as a entity, I think is just, it's not for everybody to do it that way, but for me, I quite like the idea that it doesn't represent entirely me and my person, and that it is a separate thing that exists outside of Sam Creamer.
Yeah, and we've never had that conversation before, and I couldn't agree more, and that's exactly how it was when I founded Funny Hands. I had to come up with a limited company name that I was going to register at Company House, and I sat there and thought, do I call this Del Brown Media, Del Media, and all this sort of thing? I was like, no, I don't want it to be me, because we don't know where this is going to go. We don't know what areas of the media industry we could go into, and thank God, because now in the world of podcasts and stuff like that, there weren't podcasts when I founded the company. So I wanted it to be a generic name that the whole team are represented under the one branding, and we've just got this reputation of always known for working in live shows and being a united team of friendly, professional experts that come together and make a really slick show, and that's what we've built our business on.
I mean, do you think as looking back at your younger university self, what sort of advice would you give your younger university self about being freelancing and that you wish you focused on earlier in your careers or in university?
Well, I think you might be better positioned because this is what you always wanted to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And so, I mean, I was very lucky in coming into it that I was quite steadfast in knowing what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. And it goes back to some of the points I've made earlier, I think, about having that passion and that inquisitiveness and be prepared to learn and be excited about learning. And there'll be some students that will hear me say this on camera now, and I'm sure there'll be a few laughs in the gallery and things. But I asked some of the third years a couple of weeks ago whether they were enjoying the process of writing their dissertation, and sort of met with a few eye rolls and grows. But actually, that for me, that process of learning and exploring and finding new information out is really, really exciting. And I think if you can be excited about that, you're already halfway over the line. And that's what I would say, find something to be excited about, because if you don't believe in it, or if you're not excited about it, if you are doing it 14 hours a day, it doesn't matter how much you're getting paid, eventually it starts to get quite old. So that's what I would say is, find that thing and take hold of it and run with it, because if it ignites a spark, it probably means something. To get a little bit philosophical about it, if you feel it here, it's probably the thing that's calling for you.
It's true enough. I think it's whatever drives you. It was interesting speaking to a student this morning who was blatantly driven by money, which is not a bad thing, and we all need it in order to live, and that's why we're working, because this is our industry and this is our profession. But it seemed that was his main motivation. Oh, what makes you pick certain jobs? Oh, whichever pays the most. And I just had to do a wry smile to that, because that's not how I've ever done it. No. I just seized any opportunity.
Absolutely, and I think if there was some sort of ideal utopia where I could do this, even if the money wasn't a thing, I would still do this. I would do it because I love doing it. And it wouldn't be about how much money was offered or was on or off the table. I love making content. I love putting stories out there, and the excitement of that, and being able to tell visual narratives in any form is just so invigorating and exciting for me.
For me, it's all about job variety. I love the fact that on one day I could be directing news, on the day after I'm doing music, then I'm doing some sport, and today I'm doing teaching. And just that job variety, it never gets bored. It's not the same thing every single day. If I was to do any one of those jobs every single day, I probably would start to get tired very easily. So I love the variety of work, and that's what keeps everything fresh and passionate.
Well, just to wrap things up, just a couple of quick fire questions. What was the best piece of advice you're ever given?
We were ever given?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'm going to have to think about the best bit of advice. Do you know what? This is a funny one. Smile and invoice. That was probably one of the best bit of advice. And I've turned it into my own mantra now. I have to go up to some of my people and I just whisper in their ear, smile and invoice. Because when you're on a job and it's all getting a bit stressful and it's all getting a bit uncomfortable, you just have to know, just get through the job, smile at everyone, go home and send your invoice. So smile and invoice.
Well, someone once said to me once, and it's always stuck with me, that they said that what most people are looking for a lot of the time is an answer to a question or a solution to a problem. If you can be that solution or that answer, then you will be invaluable. And that's stuck with me. That's always stuck with me, that actually it's really, most people are just doing problem solving, and you are that piece of the puzzle to solve a problem, because they're somewhere further up the chain to solve it, it's to that problem, and you're part of that. So that stuck with me.
Great advice. All right, so on the opposite side of that, what would be the one thing that would put you off from hiring somebody or recommending a student?
Ooh. Red flags. If I saw some red flags,
What would be a red flag?
what would be a red flag? Somebody that wasn't a people's person, that was not the easiest to work with, showing signs that they were going to be rubbing people up the wrong way. Timekeeping is a major one. I once had a lesson. It wasn't at this university, and I'd started speaking. I was 10 minutes into it, and the door opened, and in come 3 students, and their faces when they realised that it was Del in the room giving the lesson, and I didn't have to say words, and I can picture their faces to this day. That I was like, oh, brilliant! Is this the attitude of you turning up on time? So those are red flags.
I think for me, and I try and bring this, perhaps in a sort of, it's almost in a militaristic way. I try and bring it when I do something, but also when people are coming to me and I'm bringing people in, is more than anything, I want to know that you're on side, and I always will be on side for anyone that I am hired to be with. So, for example, if I was with Funny Hands and a client came in and went, this is a meltdown, we're having a disaster, and even if, not that it ever has been, because it never has been, obviously, with Funny Hands, but say, for example, we were in the gallery and it was a disaster. Things were falling over and the client walked in. What you don't want is for someone, some smart aleck, to go, oh, it was because the thing did.
Yeah.
No. If you're on side and you're on team, we are a team, we are a unit, we are in this together, we get through it together, right? And that's so important. And I think if you can't do that and you're always, if you're say going rogue as it is, that there's no time for that. We need to be on side because we are a team. And if there's no team player attitude, that's it.
So important. You, as a freelancer, you're also representing that production company and that brand in that moment, and just being really aware of that is really important.
And that loyalty to that is so valuable.
And that pays dividends, because then even from my side of running a production company, you see the people that have got your back and is championing your business and your brand, and they're the ones you want to repeat, call and put on your jobs.
Sort of as the last sort of final question, what are you guys looking forward to next? What's the next job that you guys are really, can you say, or do you know?
Well, we can. I don't want to jinx anything, but we're talking with another huge motor brand at the moment that are based in Europe. I'm picking my words carefully. So we're having some really interesting conversations with that, which is meaning me having to go and have several trips over to Spain to have meetings with that company, and also stuff that is not really in our remit, but is interesting work. We're working on some events, some really exciting events that could lead to other opportunities. So yeah, those are some fun things that we're looking at doing at the moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and for me, again, I've had only in the last sort of few years or so, so these music shows, which are starting, inquiries about those are starting to come in more to me from that production company, and those are always sort of bubbling away under the surface. But again, as I've started to expand into doing things like the Horror Games Awards, where I'm starting to get these bigger events coming to me, and people, asking me to make things on a bigger scale, those are starting to trickle in under the surface a little bit, and I'm hoping that, not that I'd ever see myself as a direct competitor to Funny Hands, but that to be at the scope of work or the scale of work that perhaps Funny Hands might deliver, I'd like to see Motion Hut start to be delivering work of that scale with a team of that size. That's kind of the long-term goal for me.
All right, one last final question. What do you think's going to skyrocket? What's the next big thing in telly do you guys think that we should keep our eyes out for?
Next big thing in telly, who knows? Because at the moment, things like Traitors is really rocking it, isn't it? That's showing amazing viewing figures after the success of the Celebrity one that went on before Christmas, and then of course this series. Isn't it interesting how many series has Traitors been around, and now it really seems to be really peaking at the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Obviously, all streaming services is obviously where the future is for the television industry. So yeah, that type of content. It's what's going to be the next excitement that everyone's talking about and buzzing about. Yeah. I'm not sure.
I kind of imagine that we'll start to see more content that's focused on sort of microcosms of life. As we start to see these kind of hyper curated, very highly corporate, very considered pieces of content, that actually people will be more drawn to smaller, more genuine stories, things about real people. I think that's where, just my opinion, I think we'll start to lean towards that, these kind of moments of life, slices of life kind of stories, and away from this hyper curated corporate mega content.
Interesting. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, a huge thank you to both Sam and Del for sharing your time today, your honesty, and your experiences with everyone.
Thank you for having me.
I also want to acknowledge all the people behind the cameras and the wonderful TVP students who've been crewing the show. Brilliant work as always. Thank you so much. And lastly, thank you to you viewers watching today. That's going to be it for us for live from Maidstone Studios. Thank you.